512,000 lines of Claude Code source code was just accidentally leaked, and buried inside of it are features that are about to completely change how writers and other non-developers use AI, and specifically Claude. So if you've been online in the last 48 hours or so, you've probably seen this everywhere. Claude Code's entire source code got leaked, 500,000 lines of TypeScript, hidden features, internal code names, like the entire thing. And every creator that's covering this right now is pretty much covering it from a developer angle. Like, here's 8 things you need to do, or here's 44 hidden feature flags, and all sorts of stuff that's good for developers. But nobody's really asking the questions or talking about how that, affects people like us, people who use Claude to write, to produce content, to run publishing workflows, and other types of non-development work. So what I want to do is look at these leaked features and see what they mean for specifically AI writing systems and content production and non-developers like us, because there are really a few features buried in this code that validate everything I've been building, a lot of my audience has been building, and one of them, or a couple of them, are generally insane. So we're gonna get into that as well. All right, so here's what actually, happened on March 31st, which was, I think, yesterday at this point. Anthropic pushed a new version of Claude Code to NPM, which is the package manager that developers use, and somebody forgot to exclude a 60 megabyte source map file from the package, and that source map pointed to a zip file that was sitting on a public server with no authentication, just like sitting there. And a security researcher found it, posted it on X, and it got 30 million views. GitHub mirrors, popped up instantly all over the place, 84,000 stars and hours. It was even, I think, the fastest growing repo in GitHub history. Now, important, Anthropic is filing DMCA takedowns on repos hosting the actual code. So don't go downloading it, don't host it, don't really mess with it. That's not what this video is about. What we're going to do here is just break down what was found in there, what's public, the features, the architecture, the stuff that tells us where Claude is heading, a lot that we already knew, but some of it's surprising, and also translate, what that means for writing systems and non-development workflows. No code in this video, just strategy. But first, the most important thing this leak revealed has nothing to do with actually hidden features. Most people think Claude Code is basically Claude, that you talk to, but just in your terminal, right? Like a chatbot with file access, but that's completely wrong. What the source code shows is that Claude Code is a full agent runtime, meaning a tool system, a command system, a memory system, a permission engine, a multi-agent coordinator, an MCP client and an MCP server. All of this, complicated stuff wired together under one execution pipeline. So if you're using Claude Code like a chatbot, typing questions, hoping for answers, you're really only using a small percentage of what that can actually do, and the rest of the value are in the systems that we can build around the model. So that's exactly what this video is about, in these systems that are coming down, right? So, here's something wild right off the bat. It's that the source code revealed roughly 85 different slash commands built into Claude Code. You can see all of them here. They don't even fit into the screen really. 85. So most people know just a few, like the main ones, like maybe slash help, slash context, slash MCP, stuff like that, right? Slash reset. But there are many more that matter that can be useful for writers and content creators. So here, let's take a look at 7 commands that are especially useful for people like us. The first is slash plan. All right, and this maps the approach before touching files. So this one's huge. Instead of Claude immediately starting to edit files, it maps out the full approach first and asks you before it starts. So when you're working on something complex, like maybe a full content pipeline or a multi-file skill, this can save you from Claude going rogue and really just changing things you didn't want changed, right? The second is slash compact. Most of these are, I don't even know, all of them these are not brand new. This is just what is revealed, right? So we've had this, but now we can really see, a clear look inside of, the entire picture, right? So the second one is slash compact. So when your conversation gets long, it gets expensive, and slash compact, you can manually trigger that. So it compresses your history. so you can tell it what to keep. You could even tell it, for example, slash compact, and then keep all, things about, my newsletter or something like that. And you can actually save some stuff and kind of dictate the way the compaction works. So that's the fastest way to save tokens. Next, we have slash context, which shows you exactly what files Claude is paying attention to. Every file in context costs tokens, and this gives you visibility. So you can really just clean house, which is super important for maintaining these systems, is always staying organized, always cleaning house, right? Next, we have slash cost, which shows you what you're actually, spending in that session. So most people have no idea how much a session costs until they see the bill. This is especially important as a lot of people are running into problems with usages, hitting their limits really fast. So it's good to keep track of this. Then we have slash review, also slash security review, which is built-in code review workflows. This is not like, oh, hey, Claude, look at my code, but instead this is completely structured reviews that are first-class features. So you could do this for your systems. You could do this for whatever code bases you might be running, apps you might be running. Then we have slash resume, and also slash memory, which can fit in here. This could pick up where you left off before sessions. We'll talk a little bit more about memory here in a few. But for slash resume, you could pick up where you left off. Super important for writers and non-developers running multi-day projects. I have many projects running at once, all for social, for newsletters, for YouTube, etc. And I always just pick up depending on what it is I'm working on at that time, right? And then the most practical one we have is permissions, which, if Claude Code feels slow to you, it might not be the model. It might be the permission system. Every time it asks, allow me to edit a file, or can I run this command? That's the 5-level permission system doing its job. But you can, set these wildcard permissions, like always allow file edits in my content folder, bypass permissions, etc., right? All right, these commands are cool. These are commands you should know if you're a non-developer working in Claude, but this is far from the coolest thing we have now, right? What we really want to look at now is the next big thing that they found, which is called Kairos. I think that's how you pronounce it, Greek for the right moment. This is a persistent AI that doesn't stop when you close your terminal. So, this is like Claude running and not stopping even when you close your terminal. It keeps running, it keeps watching, it keeps logging, it keeps acting on its own, which is really what everybody wants since OpenClaw, right? Since OpenClaw dropped, everybody saw the potential of having a 24/7 AI assistant running, or an AI employee, and that is in there as well. Because as of right now, when you use Claude Code, it's reactive, meaning you open it, you ask it something, it does its thing, you close it, session over. But this Kairos flips that. Claude actually becomes proactive, not reactive, right? So here's how it works. When there's nothing in the message queue, when the message queue is empty or you're not actively talking to it, instead of it just sitting there, it's actually injecting what they call a tick. So basically it asks itself, should I do something right now or should I sleep, right? That's what you can see here. So the queue's empty. It's going to inject a tick. Should I act or should I sleep? And then it manages its own cost, meaning the source code literally has a prompt that tells the model, each wake up costs an API call, but the cache expires after 5 minutes of inactivity. So like balance accordingly. That's what the AI is telling itself. So it's managing its own bill. All right. Now, here's why this matters, if you're, let's say, a writer or a content creator, or non-developer. Imagine this. Imagine you have a content calendar, a content pipeline. You've got drafts in progress. You've got a newsletter that you're planning for Thursday. Maybe right now you open up Claude and you start manually reminding it of everything, right? Or trying to get it back to the baseline of what you're working on, of what we have coming up, check in and stuff like this. Well, with Kairos, Claude would already be watching. It would already notice that, for example, your draft hasn't been touched in 3 days. It might flag a topic that you're covering that just went viral and say, oh, you should publish this sooner. It could be, doing this type of research, even when you don't have it open. Before you even ask it, it could already be proactively doing research, right? So, it could also send you push notifications, apparently. So it could push files to you. It can monitor your GitHub repos for activity. And here's the thing, like, I've been building this exact pattern manually, right? With some help with new features that have come down the pipeline of Claude. I've been using memory files. I've been using session continuity. I've been using sub agents that run in the background. I've been using the Claude Code and Claude Cowork scheduling tasks features. All of this, my entire writing operation runs on this architecture already. So what Kairos tells me and tells all of you is that Anthropic looked at what us power users are doing and said, yeah, we should just build that into the product, right? And that's the pattern you're going to see with every feature I show you today. But the next one, Dream Mode, that's the one that really is interesting to me. Dream Mode, what they found is a service in the code called Auto Dream, which we kind of already knew about, I would say probably a week or two ago, but because people were posting that they were seeing this new Dream Mode function inside of their Claude Code, and that's kind of confirmed here. So the system prompt for this Dream Mode inside of Claude Code literally says this, I'm not making it up. It says like, you are performing a dream, a reflective pass over your memory files. So this is basically a memory consolidation engine that's running as a separate background process so it can't corrupt your main session. And here's exactly what it does. It goes through 4 phases of a dream cycle. The first is orient, or survey the memory state. It surveys everything in its memory system, what files exist, what's current, what's stale. So it's going through all of its memory and doing that. The next phase is curate. It's processing all of your raw daily logs from your sessions, and it's converting these messy notes into structured knowledge. So if you said, for example, yesterday in a conversation, it converts that to the actual date, so it still makes sense weeks later, for example. And then it moves on to the next phase, which is consolidate, where it's writing and updating memory files, resolving contradictions, and removing outdated stuff. And then lastly is prune, where it's keeping the index lean to like under 200 lines or so. Of course, some of this is probably going to be changed. We don't know how like absolute any of this is, but we know the direction, and this is the direction that we can expect, right? So this dream cycle is triggering automatically, supposedly after 24 hours in 5 sessions since the last dream. So if you work with Claude all day and close your laptop, and while you sleep, Claude is going to organize everything it learned about you. It's basically going to do exactly what us humans do when we dream, which is consolidate our memories. So when you shut Claude down and it goes to sleep, it's consolidating all of its memories that it learned about you in your work over the past however long, 24 hours or whatever. So think about what this means for us, especially for things like, voice capture or writing systems or non-development work, right? If you want Claude to remember this type of stuff, you need to maintain it manually. You need to update it yourself as your system or as your style evolves. And that's what I've taught before, and that worked. But now with Dream Mode, it means Claude can do a lot of this autonomously. Every session, it might pick up nuances about how you maybe write or things that you've been working on, what you like and what you don't like. When you get mad at it, it's going to know, right? And overnight, it's going to consolidate all of that in the structured knowledge that carries forward. I've already been testing this out because I did see that I had access to it, and it does work incredibly well, right? This is like context that compounds, which is super important, super powerful. That's the phrase I always like to use, context that compounds, or compounding context. And Anthropic supposedly is just going to bake this right into the product, all right? So the memory architecture they're using here is 3 layers. We have a lightweight index, which is a memory.md apparently. This is going to point to where your real knowledge lives. So just think of it as an index, right? Topic files, the actual deep knowledge about your projects, your preferences, your patterns. That is going to live in the topic files or the per domain files. And then your raw session transcripts, those can be searched but aren't actually front loaded into your context. So if you've been following what I've built before, plugins, skills, Claude.md files, I've built memory systems before. This is that type of architecture where you have an index and it's actually pointing to other knowledge. It's pointing to organized files and keeping everything nice, lean, and organized, right? This is not a coincidence. This is where all of our systems have been going for a while. And if you're building yours now, you're going to be completely ready once stuff like this actually ships into the apps and in tools that we use. All right. All right, so this one is quick but powerful. Apparently, they found a feature called UltraPlan where it offloads complex planning to a cloud runtime running Opus, the most powerful model, for up to 30 minutes of uninterrupted thinking. So right now, when you ask Claude to plan something, it might think for a few seconds, maybe a minute. It's going to give you what it's got. It's fast, but it's, surface level for truly complex, work. And UltraPlan would act differently. This would be like you give it a big task, like plan my entire newsletter calendar for, the next month, or outline this 12 chapter book, or design a launch sequence across the email, Substack, and YouTube, something like that. That goes really deep, and it will go really deep with 30 minutes of dedicated thinking. That's incredibly impressive. I'm super excited if something like that actually does come out. And there's even a browser UI where you can watch it work and approve or reject the output. So for writers and content creators, this is like a full-blown strategist or an employee that you would never could have afforded to hire. All right. That kind of deep editorial planning that used to take a week of back and forth, this is done in 30 minutes by an AI that already knows your brand, knows your voice, knows your audience, has memories of you, everything. So quick tasks now stay quick. Big planning tasks get the dedicated time they actually would need. All right, and here's some other quick hits on some other interesting stuff buried in the code that has been going viral. Some fun stuff, some more controversial stuff. But either way, the first is anti-distillation distillation measures. This is Anthropic basically playing defense, where like there's a feature flag that will inject fake tool definitions into API calls. So why would you do this? To like poison training data. So if a competitor is recording API traffic to train their own models, they pick up these, fake tools and train on garbage. There's also a system that summarizes Claude's reasoning between tool calls and cryptographically signs the summaries, so competitors get summaries, not the full chain of thought. Anthropic is actively protecting their moat, which I personally find smart, and I like that. I think that they should be doing that. But nonetheless, this has made its rounds. And then we also have this leak that the model is detecting your anger with pattern matching for curse words. So, if you're using like WTFs or FFS, or other explicit language, the model will detect that and mark it as like you not being happy with the model, and that's interesting because I use that all the time, right? And then lastly, we have the just bigger picture of all of this. Everything I showed you, the Kairos, the dream mode, the UltraPlan, memory architecture, all of this points to the same direction. And that's that Anthropic is building natively what people like me and others have been building manually. Persistent memory, voice capture that improves over time, background agents that act without being, explicitly asked to do so, skill systems, more plugin architectures, context that compounds across sessions. So if you've been watching this channel, if you've been following me on my Substack or in my programs, you've seen me build all of this manually for a long time now, probably, maybe up over a year and a half by now. Memory files, voice profiles, sub agents, plugin marketplaces, my entire systems, are built on this architecture. And this tells us that this is the future and we got it right. This isn't some hack. This is where the product is going. This is where in my opinion, greatest AI company is taking the greatest AI tool out there. This is what the experts agree on. So we could be happy that we, have been following along and were, correct this whole time. So here's the move for right now, which is always the move, really. It's that the gap between someone who prompts Claude and someone who builds systems with Claude is about to get even massively wider than it already was. So when Kairos ships, if it does, when Dream Mode ships, well, it's already here. When something like an UltraPlan ships, the people who already have their systems built are just going to get supercharged overnight. Like overnight, without having to do anything. But the people who are still typing into a chat box, who are still collecting prompts, who are still starting fresh every time, which is like 99% of people out there at this point, they're going to be even further behind, right? So build your systems now, set up your Claude.md, build your voice profiles, create your skills, organize your context, because when these features go live, you want to be the person whose system just got exponentially better, not the person who has to now start, from scratch building again. If you want to see how I build all of this, the writing system, the plugins, the skills, the whole operation, make sure to subscribe to this channel. That's what we're all about here, AI writing systems and non-development workflows, especially with Claude. And if you want the actual tools, plugins, skills, marketplaces, my new co-writer system is getting ready to launch again. So make sure to check all of that out in the description. Drop a comment. What features, from the leak are you most excited about? Is it Kairos? Is it Dream Mode? Is it UltraPlan? I want to know, and we will see you in the next one.